Hey, it's your guy Tyrrell back with the interviews. Barcelona beat Sevilla in the Spanish Super Cup, but how did they do it? Did Sevilla play well? Did Barcelona encounter some issues? Don't worry, here at the interviews, we've got you covered. So on this edition of the interviews, we're going to briefly break down how Barcelona overcame Sevilla. So Barcelona started their season on winning terms, beating Sevilla in the Super Cup in somewhat of a dramatic fashion. However, in today's video, we're going to break down where Barcelona went wrong, what Sevilla did right, and how Barcelona improved in the second half. When we do break it down, we have Barcelona in a 4-3-3. Up front, Suarez, Messi, and Dembele. In midfield, they went with Artur, they went with Rafinha, they went with Busquets. Sevilla going in more of a 3-4-2-1. Up front, they went with Muriel just in behind him. They had Vasquez and Sarabia in midfield, Roque Mesa and Banega, and out at wingback, they had Jesus Navas and Escudero. When we think about what went wrong for Barcelona in the first half and one of the issues that they did kind of sort of struggle is the fact that without Messi, you kind of question how they're going to get things going, how they're going to create chances. The way Sevilla lined up did shape this game as well, and the fact that they scored an early goal really helped them out, because what it did do was allowed Sevilla to drop off and pretty much a 5-4-1. And basically what Sevilla did here was they had Muriel sitting on Busquets, they had the two midfielders, they had Banega sitting on Artur, they had Roque Mesa stepping to Rafinha, and then they had the wider players focusing on what should have been the fullbacks, but they tucked in a bit narrow because they knew that Barcelona were going to try to get forward, were going to try and take control of the game. Now when you look at it, Busquets is the dictator from deep. Muriel sat on him. That was a big issue for Barcelona because he couldn't create from the back. They didn't mind if Piqué and Lenglet did get on the ball just because they weren't creating anything. They weren't finding penetrative passes in that narrow back line. The problem here is that Rafinha, for all the expectation, for all the hype around him, just hasn't delivered. Often drifted out to the right, tried to get somewhat of a combination going with Nelson Semedo. It didn't work out, and that was a big issue. Artur, obviously, we'll see if he can settle in at the Camp Nou, but a lot of patient passes, sideway passes, not really breaking the lines, not really getting the ball into Messi, into Suarez as consistently as you would want him to. So that left the burden on Messi. Dembele did very well in the sense that he was more narrow, which allowed Jordi Alba to get forward and run at Jesus Navas. And the fact was that he did well when he received the ball in those pockets of spaces so that he could turn and run at goal. Luis Suarez, much of a peripheral figure throughout the game. When he did get the opportunities, his first touch and his final ball weren't the greatest. Perhaps it's just some preseason rustiness, but he wasn't at his best. So what does that mean? It relied heavily on Messi. And Messi, what he had to do was, because they were sitting so deep, because they were keeping it pretty narrow in midfield, he had to drop a bit deeper. He did very well of combining with the fullbacks, getting them in behind his players. You saw one instance where he picked up the ball from this deep right-hand side. He had Semedo making the run in behind Escudero, slides the ball into that space. However, Semedo's cross couldn't meet a teammate. We look at the little diagonals that we've seen from Messi where he picks up positions more central or either on the right-hand side, looking for the Jordi Alba run in behind Jesus Navas, who technically isn't really a defender. He's more of a right winger that's been converted to a right wing back. We saw that on a few occasions, didn't lead to much in the earlier stages. Messi from deep on the left-hand side, playing a lovely reverse ball into that space for Alba to break into. However, he was offside in that sense. We look at one situation where you have Messi dribbling. At one point, it looked like he had skipped past 7 players. He just cutting in through. Navas is tucked in a bit too deep, and then there's space right through here for Alba to get onto it. He forces the keeper into a save, but that wasn't enough. Messi was kind of the architect behind everything. If it wasn't through the fullbacks, there was one opportunity where he was a bit deeper, and we had Suarez for one of the few times slide in behind his marker, care to get onto the ball. However, he wasn't able to find the back of the net. Messi was the key denominator in this first half. He was the ticking catalyst for Barcelona, but that was a big worry because they weren't getting anything else from anyone. The midfielders weren't creating. Suarez wasn't really getting forward. Dembele obviously struggled. They ended up equalizing based on the fact that it was a Messi free kick that was saved and PK tapped it in, but Barcelona, from an attacking sense, I will get to the defensive side in a second, needed help, and that is where they had to turn to in the second half. But let's get back to Sevilla. What did they do right in the first half? Well, they did sit a bit deeper. They got the goal fortuitously. It was a good break on the counterattack because basically what happened is that it was a poor Jordi Alba header that bypassed Busquets. Muriel was able to break onto it. Sarabia was able to join the attack, and that's how that stemmed. But they were looking dangerous on the break. They were looking dangerous on the counter attack. Muriel forcing Busquets into a booking. There was one instance where he was with Lenglet. He nutmegged him and was forced into a foul. They were posing a threat on the counter attack. That was a big problem for Barcelona. Busquets didn't have much protection in the central area, and with the fullbacks bombing forward, you have PK and Lenglet, who aren't a renowned partnership. They haven't really played many games together. And then you have Busquets, who isn't as mobile as other defensive midfielders. So that was a big problem. And when you have the counter-attacking threat of Muriel, Sarabia, and Vasquez looking to break forward, that is going to be a problem. And that's kind of where they struck. You think about their chances. A lot of it was down through Muriel. Barcelona were forced into cynical tackles to break up that play. There's only one other instance towards the end of the half where Muriel was able to get past Semedo and pull the ball back for Sarabia inside of the box, where he ran across Jordi Alba and he forced Ter Stegen into a save. But Barcelona were struggling in that aspect. In the second half, what was it? Sort of the same thing in terms of how Sevilla was getting at them. It was more through Jesus Navas on the counterattack. Again, like I said, he was bombing forward, running past Alba in transition, delivering crosses into the box that PK was forced to intervene with, and that was a big problem for them. There was one instance towards the end of this, more so the final quarter hour of the game, where it's again driving forward. Andre Silva had come on. He played the ball into Silva, bypassed Busquets, and fired a shot on goal. Besides that, Banega was driving forward from midfield in the second half in transition. They were getting counter-attacking threats, but again, this goes down to what Barcelona did right in the second half. When you look at the game as a whole for Sevilla, they had the counter-attacking threat through Jesus Navas. Muriel was causing them problems in the first half, and then obviously when they get that penalty shout towards the end, it's again the Barcelona fullbacks falling asleep. It's someone getting across Jordi Alba, and that leads to a foul, and that is the problem. The Barcelona fullbacks were asleep. There was not enough protection for Busquets, so they were struggling in transition. What did they do in the second half to fix these issues? Right away, take off Rafinha. They bring on Ivan Rakitic. Later on in the half, maybe a few minutes later, around the 52nd minute mark, they bring on Philippe Coutinho to replace Artur. What does this give Barcelona now? Well, one, Rakitic could sit a bit deeper, ensures that now with Muriel there's another passing marker, so they're able to free up Busquets or free up Rakitic to play those forward passes, to dictate the tempo of the game, to provide protection on the counterattack. That's one thing that Barcelona did well. Coutinho's presence also gives them a direct threat to push forward. He has that long range ability. We didn't get to see that, but there was an instance in the second half where you really saw what Philippe Coutinho was about, playing it into Suarez and then getting it back, running across midfield, and that was pivotal for what he was doing, sliding the ball into Messi, who then teed up Dembele, or it was to Dembele that teed up Messi, and that shot was blocked. But again, Coutinho's willingness to get forward, to drive forward, to play passes into that space, into those pockets between the lines. Then you still had Dembele picking up the ball and running towards goal. Now you're seeing more space in midfield because Barcelona was being pulled out again with those two there, and Rakitic and Busquets. You had one marker there. You don't want to pull Roque Mesa forward. You don't want to pull Banega forward, because then again, that creates more space in midfield for Messi or Suarez to get into. And like I said, there was one play where you have Busquets finding the pass behind Roque for Messi. Messi drives that goal, slides it to Dembele, and Dembele fires his shot on goal. So that was a big thing that really did help Barcelona in that sense. But when you look at it as a whole and break down the game, Barcelona Barcelona scored goals from basically a set piece, from a moment of individual brilliance. They struggled in the first half to create chances. They struggled in the first half in the sense that they were being bypassed. Their fullbacks weren't doing well from a defensive end. Busquets was covering too much space. So that was where Sevilla was getting their threat. Muriel obviously got forward. In the second half, Navas and Banega got forward. Their shape was very conservative, but it did halt Barcelona in the first half, but the changes helped Barcelona. Rakitic came on, ensured that there was control, ensured that there was protection for Busquets. He was able to play passes forward. They brought on Coutinho, who was able to drive forward, look for the forward pass, make darting runs into the final third, and that was pivotal for Barcelona. It freed up space for Suarez. It ensured that the burden on Messi from a creative and a goal-scoring aspect was minimized, and at the end of the day, they created enough chances to win the game. Very lucky that Ben Yedder did miss that penalty shot at the end, but when you look at it as a whole, Sevilla brought on Andre Silva, they brought on Alex Vidal. It didn't do enough, and they didn't really look like going forward in terms of open play until they conceded, and by then it was a bit too late. And Ter Stegen's penalty save was a bit of justice at the end, because was it a penalty? Was it not? We're not here to discuss that, but Barcelona upped their levels in the second half, looked a bit better, and were worthy winners. But let me know what you guys think. Is Luis Suarez in preseason form, or is this what we're going to expect from him this season? Should we be worried about Barcelona, who look to heavily rely on Lionel Messi? And what about Sevilla? What do you expect from them this season? Meet me in the comments below. Don't forget I upload videos every day, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. And that was your daily dose of the interviews.